Well, I did not expect to be back so soon after my last video, but here I am. And just to get this out of the way, I am a Skills 2.0 fan. I am excited for it. I will be there day one, and I know I'll have fun with it, but I want to talk about it critically. I say this because the discourse one day after Skills 2.0 dropped has completely devolved into, oh, is this person being positive or negative? And you pick how seriously you take them from there. It's just sports teams now, and that sucks. I would really rather rein things in and have some genuine conversation. So I'm making this space as a little laid back video. Don't want to edit it in too much, just want to chat. Just keep me on in the background, and all I'll really be doing is putting some of what people are saying about the changes on screen. My biggest punishment for making another video so soon is I have to get more gameplay footage. The joke is I don't want to play Payday 3. Anyway, you might remember this time last year I talked about Armor 2.0, which was announced then, and the things I hated about it. That holds true. The first half of that video isn't that relevant anymore, but I pretty much hit the nail on the head that impact is always the best, but having 10-second long armor regen timers is super boring, and I argued for much more interesting ways to implement an armor system that allowed you to utilize the full range of capabilities that a customizable 4-chunk bar let you. To this day, I think that regenerating one chunk at a time would be way more fun to mess around with. But that day never came. It took 8 months for them to implement Armor 2.0 after teasing it, and they still changed nothing really from the teaser. And the reason I bring this up is because we are in the exact same place. Most important thing you need to know about Skills 2.0 is your feedback does not matter. Maybe that's why the discourse has turned into sports teams. Debating the Eagles roster is only serious to anyone under the delusion the coach is going to take their advice, and the developers are not going to act on your Skills 2.0 feedback. This fat orange banner says everything in the post is subject to change, which you'd think means they're fluid and ready to change it to fit the community, but it actually just means you can't take any of its glaring flaws seriously. Because the tiny paragraph right after reads, and I quote, "The release version won't have time to be adjusted. However, they say they'll build on it after releasing it, so feel free to give feedback anyway." I've seen a lot of naive people getting this part wrong, so I'll simplify it even further in no uncertain terms. They cannot and will not change Skills 2.0. Just like they could not change Armor 2.0. Why not is beyond me, frankly, because more likely than not, they will make us wait at least 4 months, if I'm being generous, but it could easily be 8 months just to get these systems, which is so much time to pump the brakes on the system and edit the design flaws. They literally say they haven't decided the cost of skills yet at all, which is proof that Skills 2.0 is still on the design floor, but you can bet your ass they're not going to budge and adjust anything significant. There is a little bit of wiggle room in two directions. One is that they don't say they won't change it at all, they just say they won't be able to adjust it all that much, which, if you think that means anything, I envy your naivety. At most this means that if the design had, I don't know, just to make something random up, if it had like a 4,444% damage bonus in it, they can still change that before go live. But they most certainly will not be able to change anything I talk about in this video. This conversation is just for you and me. It's all love. It's all love. And then on the other direction, they say they'll keep editing Skills 2.0 after releasing it. Now that's refreshing. They should try that for Armor 2.0 sometime. But on a serious note though, I hate this. Sincerely. For example, let's say Sideclimbing is overpowered, like some people have posited, but it's not taken out of a release Skills 2.0. What happens then? Half the community wants it gone, but the other half clings to it and likes being overpowered, so no one can be happy. And they either decide how, why waste any resources when we'll only please half the community either way, or they decide to axe it, but people are going to be way more pissed off than gracious because, like, axing side climbing wouldn't be new content. People would not return to Payday 3 because they removed a feature, you know what I mean? Kicking these very necessary fixes that people are pointing out to down the line after release is a ticking time bomb, and I'm not convinced they can't listen to feedback right now. So yeah, this really made me drag my heels on talking about it all, but I decided it's still an interesting conversation, and it starts with this. Before I even talk about the skill system, let's talk about the concept of a skill system rework and why we needed a skill system rework in the first place. And you just know when I open the topic with broad concepts, I'm about to get so far up my own ass, so get ready. Payday 3 skills were boring, and traversing skill lines were flat and blatantly gave way to imbalance, because you could get nearly any skill at the cost of 1 out of 28 skill points. There weren't enough limitations to make building interesting, and even in a perfect world, the skills were too low-key to feel impactful anyway. In my first video, I literally say that Payday 2 skills were very sexy. I don't know why I said it like that. Like, half of Payday 2's builds take Berserk for the fat damage bonus passive. And then Payday 3 followed that up with tiny 10% damage bonus conditional buffs. It's not sexy at all. It's underwhelming. On launch, the players spat it back out, and it's only gotten worse over time because the obviously good skills became obvious, and the new must-takes got added that paved over the nuance of the original system. I'm going to take a new stance on this. Payday 3's skill system on launch was pretty well balanced. Some stinkers like the marking tree, obviously ammo funnel was an oversight, but you have to commend the game for being very fair and challenging. It was tightly balanced. Everything was giving you a 10% bonus and wasn't passive. You had to engage with the skills for power, which kept you in check and rewarded skill. Of course, that wasn't the game's strength. It would have been a lot cooler if it was more interesting than that, but it's useful to admit that both are true. The game was worse off in the long run, but the balance served the game. Payday 3's skill system fit Payday 3's gameplay. That's the point I want to home in on. Payday 3's gameplay is the foundation of everything. There is not one single thing you can change about the game to make the gameplay better. It's hundreds of features and quirks coalescing into a 10-minute heist, and skills are undoubtedly a huge component of that. So when you, as EAK says, rip out features and replace them with something entirely new, that's like taking a photo and replacing an entire thing in it. The new part will stick out entirely, the context of everything else will vastly change, and I guess Starbreeze is just hoping that if they do this enough times, the entire picture will eventually look right. So, let's take a moment here, and I want you to ask yourself, what is wrong with this approach? There's some optimism ending my first video that basically boils down to, yeah, they are changing everything away from the base game of Payday 3, and it feels half-assed right now, but in the future, it might work, and I hope it will. I'm older now, and I can admit I was naive. So here's another analogy. Payday 3 on launch is a full-blown, freshly built Jenga tower. But to simulate the server instability, it's staged on like a running laundry machine. And you know, the washing machine eventually finished running, but it was like rumbling the whole time. It's just like the pieces kept like falling apart. You have to like put them back together. It was all fucked up. Anyway, so you have this Jenga tower. Every piece was very snug and fit together, Except everybody fucking hates this Jenga tower. There are like 3 redeemable pieces in this entire tower, and the rest is repulsive and offensive and needs to die immediately. What would you do here? Genuinely, what would you do? I would love comments about this. Because what Payday 3 has done is, very slowly, taken each piece off of the tower and then replaced it at the top of the tower. Adaptive armor, the UI reworks, the continuous skill additions and nerfs. Each time, they plucked something from the fundamental base of Payday 3 and put it on top. In the process, the well-balanced armor system from the base game is thrown off balance by armor repair kits and adaptive armor, and so the original image of a sturdy Jenga tower is ruined for this quick fix. And they just keep doing this. They keep taking a chunk out of Payday 3 that fits in the context of the rest of Payday 3, and they rip it out, replace it with a new chunk that is put on the top of the Jenga tower. And even though this new chunk is more pleasing than the old chunk, it doesn't fit with the original image. Now, who cares if it doesn't fit, right? Well, because the gameplay is the foundation. If it doesn't fit with the foundation, it juts out. It's flimsy and unstable and penetrable. I've seen a lot of critique about Skills 2.0 being unbalanced, but I think that argument is off the mark. It's more like Payday 3 was not built for Skills 2.0 at all. It is wholly unprepared for the wild variety of abilities Skills 2.0 will let you have, because everything else in the game falls short. We are currently living in a pre-Skills 2.0 world, and we can't help but see the world from Payday 3's point of view. And from that point of view, Skills 2.0 is like giving a Victorian child a Dorito. How the fuck are we gonna go from this bland-ass game on the screen to a world where we can throw a grenade, and this entire horde of 50 enemies is just gonna kaput, and then I get the grenade back for free and do it again? Skills 2.0's biggest downfall is not its own design, but that it has to exist in Payday 3. What I'm circling around saying is that no matter what you do, you cannot take the Payday 3 out of Payday 3. You can take the armor and the skills out, but there will still always be a bit of the Payday 3 that everyone hated on launch, because ultimately, the reworks were still made within the context of Payday 3. They can't just make the ideal armor rework. If it doesn't fit Payday 3's gameplay, then they have to remake it so it does. Same with Skills 2.0 here. And so if you ask me what's wrong with the approach of reworking every mechanic people dislike slowly, it's that it's never done correctly the first time. At this point, we've had armor, skills, UI, and progression overhauled more than once, and at this rate, it'll happen again too. Payday 3 screwed itself over from the ground up, and actually fixing anything for good is Sisyphean. There will always be another rework ahead of it because the groundwork itself does not permit it. Phew. Okay, with that meditation off my chest, I think we can talk about the actual rework now. I guess I can still pretend any of this matters. Oh my fucking god. Can you hear the lawnmower? I'm crashing out. I guess I can still pretend any of this matters after the 2 points I've made so far. So, this video is about engaging with the community sentiment. Not just talking about the rework, but what people said about it too. The only people I'm not going to count are videos, just to be honest, they are probably the most put together arguments, but I don't have that kind of time to watch through them all. I also can't speak much on what's said in the Payday Discord because I'm not in there. I respect myself too much. So first off, let's talk about the overlap with Payday 2. I saw a lot of criticism it was too Payday 2-y, but also some praise for the same reason. It's embarrassing to acknowledge that Payday 3 is so repulsive that the majority of people would rather have Payday 2 too. It's something I've seen under literally every Payday video I make, where I try to bring some nuance to the situation, and some loser who won't even hit play on the video, they'll just be like, oh, why didn't they make Payday 2 again? Oh, my mom cooks me dinner but doesn't love me. I'm judging you. But you're entitled to your opinion, that's fine. You're also apparently entitled to a Payday 2 skills clone, which is less fine. I don't really care about how similar the two skill systems look. Genuinely, like, people are pointing this out to accuse the team of being lazy, and 100% that must be what's happening because they could have learned from any other successful skill tree of the past couple years, instead of rehashing Payday 2's pretty simple one. Sideclimbing, which we'll get to later I promise, that actually gives the trees more of a purpose, when before it felt like they didn't branch at all into. Like, as much as I love Payday 2's skills, the skill system itself is so detrimentally simple. You can boil it down this way. There's 6 skills, tiered and accordingly more expensive, and you take the lower tier to get to the higher tier. Most of your decisions making is just picking a few skill trees because the game forces you to buy less favorable skills to reach what you really want, where most games give you more options, so you're always happily spending points. You could easily contort this to be a 4 skill line with 2 options on the second and third tier. The big difference is really just the ability to ace all the skills. It made it easy to balance the skills you could afford, but it's not deep at all. I know the Payday 2 diehards are still kicking, and I just have to put my stake in the ground and say, if you're calling the structure of Payday 2 skills timeless in a sea of modern RPG hits, you are out of touch. And speaking of out of touch, there's another Payday 2 note I want to hit before I move on to Sideclimbing. This is inspired by Rex. Like a week before Skills 2.0 was announced, he pointed out that Payday 2 skills often curate to a particular gun. I'm sounding the alarms right now and warning you, I am about to give Payday 3 another backhanded compliment for its original skills. A refreshing break from Payday 2 skills is that right now, in Payday 3, you can use the shotgun skills with a sniper. You can use the rifle kills with a shotgun. Ammo Funnel Moscone was a whole movement, and in this new system it's limited to rifles and machine guns. I genuinely liked to take the skill that gave you edge and grit for getting point blank kills, which was mostly meant for shotguns, but I had the freedom to adjust my playstyle on another gun. In Payday 2, you have a tree just for pistols, one for snipers, one for shotguns, and one for automatic weapons. Then most people take Berserk because it doesn't pigeonhole them, and before people would take Silent Killer because it let them run any gun they wanted as long as they suppressed it. Payday 2 is crying out for these restrictions to be lifted so people can just enjoy what they want to do and still match DPS on high difficulties. So you hope and pray if Payday 2's skill system ever came back, it would drop this, just like how Payday 3 dropped naming any skill specifically as shotguns only or whatever, and instead, Skills 2.0 has tripled down on it. Like, holy fuck, instead of just the 4 trees in Payday 2 I listed, we now have one for rifles and machine guns only, one for frag grenades specifically, one for flashbang specifically, one for smoke grenades specifically, one for shot grenades specifically, I guess, one for throwing knives specifically, one for SMGs only, one for shotguns, one for handguns only, and shotguns are a different skill tree, and I'm fucking talking over myself because there's just so much to list, and one for snipers and marksman rifles only. At this point, it would have been faster to tell you all the skills that don't pigeonhole you into using a certain gun archetype and throwable. Here's all of them, by the way. Pay attention to the fact that all of these are playstyles instead of a loadout. One for armor builds, one for ammo builds, one for hostage trading, one for medic builds, one for unmasked stealth, one for loud and stealth ECMs, one for sentry guns, and one for dodge. To me, these reinforce and elevate ways to play the game, which is great. They are playstyles that exist and they are being fleshed out to be more nuanced. Did we really have to make an entire skill tree for throwing knives? Shot grenades? Just to make them good? If they add a new throwable later, will it need a skill tree to see any use? My point is twofold. One, if you decide you want to have a build that uses SMGs and smokes, you just take the SMG and smoke trees. There's no decision making. Making a build now is just picking the gun and throwable you want, and that's half the build. 2. This limits your options everywhere else, too, because once you've picked a gun and throwable, no other skill tree works with those guns and throwables. So you can cross out 8, yes, 8 skill trees out of the 10 that are gun or throwable specific, and you're left with 2 for your loadout, and then 7 others to pick from, 4 of which are for the deployable you pick, and 1 is for stealth. This is what Olaf here called perceived variety, but he called it a good thing when we were talking about Payday 2's problems. I'm just gonna be frank, I will never be on the level of Payday 2 diehards, and it's only out of respect that I'm calling them diehards and not meat riders. I didn't. It's an incredible game, but the skill system is flawed all over, and should not have carried over this way. Skills 2.0 here is perceived variety because you can't actually cherry pick and min-max good skills, since most skills don't even function with your loadout. I'm willing to admit this much, it's hard to conceptualize an entire skill system like Payday 2 without forcing you into some archetypes. But that's especially why they shouldn't have remade the Payday 2 skill system. Look at other skill trees that make you choose a loadout like Borderlands 4 or Darktide's abilities, and then a playstyle within that loadout. Their biggest sin truly was copying Payday 2 skill trees. This is the end of the Payday 2 part. The parallels are about to end, because it's a great time to discuss side climbing. The community jumped on this one pretty quickly, and I applaud them because I agree. Side climbing skill trees is a suspicious lot like skill lines. The thing is, I basically already made the argument for both sides. And much credit to Latios, which always brings a unique and nuanced take that takes the words out of my mouth, much better than any half-assed defense of side climbing like, oh, you don't want the tier 4 skills even if they're basically free. Latios argues that side climbing is some much needed uniqueness, and I agree. In a Payday 2 corpse of a skill system, the ability to go sideways doesn't just distinguish it, it also patches the earlier hole I talked about that Payday 2 trees are just plain ass skill lines with 2 prongs. But this way is just so unimaginative, it might as well be skipping the cost like skill lines do. It sounds like the developers are sincerely considering making the skills cost the same at every tier, which is crazy, and I'm guessing it's because you'd be saving more points skipping tiers through side climbing this way. I don't have the time to matrix multiply every skill and see if side climbing will break the balance of skills 2.0. Frankly, I don't care, and I'll get into that later. I just want to see them do it in a more interesting way. Maybe be cute about it, and you can have only cross skills if they're next to each other. Like, Armored Up here reaches over to Ammo Funnel, then Ammo Funnel can reach tier 4 or tier 2 of the Commando tree because they're adjacent. But you need to take hollow point rounds to reach Scavenger and unlock the Grenadier tree. It would complicate the balancing, but it'd be cool. You could make the outer skills more valuable and the inner ones are good because they let you traverse trees. But I'm just spitballing some fun stuff. My real take is that side climbing is not as broken as it seems, only because of the other thing I just talked about. All the skill trees expect you to be curating to their loadout. Take Soldier for example here, they have armor bags, assault rifles, and frag grenades. Yeah, it was a lot cheaper for them to get these skills, but why wouldn't they manually climb from the bottom up anyway? The other trees don't have anything they want. They could take dodge or ECMs, but besides those two, they literally don't need any of the other skill trees. They don't fit their loadout and they are disproportionately rewarded by taking tier 1 skills, so just climb from the bottom up anyway. Skills 2.0 is so roughly engineered to limit your playstyle to certain trees that being able to take from any skill tree is no longer powerful. In Skills 1.0 it was very powerful because Ammo Funnel could be taken on any gun. Adrenaline fit any build, there were no hard limits like only works with rifles, and now they throw it on every skill tree. The worst thing about side climbing is that if you want to min-max, you're going to get baited into taking rifles with armor builds just because it's easy. Same with Mechanic Page putting shocks and sentries next to shotguns. The first two have synergy, and shotguns are just third wheeling, but They put it there knowing you want a deployable gun and throwable on the same page to sideclimb. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. It would be too obviously flawed if the game offered you 2 throwable trees on the same page. But it's flawed regardless. I can't believe the straw man from earlier is kind of right. You literally don't care about sideclimbing, not because the tier 4 skills aren't good enough to take, but because you can afford them anyway. Tying into sideclimbing, I briefly touched on affording skills and I want to talk about that again. Seen so much discourse about how much skills cost, and I blame Starbreeze for not communicating this better. Skills don't cost anything yet. It's kind of appalling. They made this whole system and showed it off and they don't know the skill point economy at all? There is no agreed upon cost for skills at any tier, or if the skills will cost more at one tier than another. They're still debating this, I guess. Let's entertain this conversation though, because everyone either feels crazy that it's not obvious or didn't even notice it was contentious because it's obvious. Should skills be like the old Payday 2 in scale 1, 2, 3, 4 and double cost on Ace? Like I said earlier, I think they want higher tiers to be cheaper so you can sideclimb more effectively. If sideclimbing was more interesting than just nerd pulling to the top of a tree and then getting access to all the skills, I might fuck with this, but it would probably also take skill trees being taller. Like, I really can't stress how unimpactful sideclimbing will be, since they won't be implementing a Payday 2 style points requirement to reach tier 4. You can just spend 3 skill points to reach tier 4 on any tree, so assuming that when they do figure out the cost it's still like 10% of your total skill points, it's not a huge deal at all. You're not saving much with sideclimbing. We're predisposed to think it would be more impactful because we're used to wasting skill points in Payday 2 to reach the point requirement for tier 4. But without a point requirement, you're saving a lot less points by skipping tiers regardless of how much buying power we end up with when they decide the skill point cost. My main issue is that now that I've basically dissected skills 2.0, so you just always pick the skill tree that fit your loadout, I don't even feel like skills cost anything. Like, the cost of skill points has such little impact. In Payday 2, if you only needed 3 skill trees, you just buy them all out. If Skills 2.0 gives you remotely as much purchasing power, it won't matter at all. And if it doesn't, and it's really lopsided with too many or too few skills, it's gonna suck even more. The best case scenario is they only give you enough points to take half of each tree, but then you just get into the conversation where the game might punish you for not sideclimbing. And that's where I really think sideclimbing might suck, is if you don't want to use rifles with armor bags or frag grenades, but you can't afford to climb SMGs or whatever other tree. It's a very tight rope, and my final verdict on sideclimbing is that it should be removed because at the best of times it's useless, and at the worst of times it's harmful to build diversity. There is unfortunately no silver lining unless they go with a new approach, like my cute little side branching concept that adds depth and decision making. Okay, we're like 30-ish minutes in. I'm gonna take a break from Skills 2.0 critique finally. A little midpoint here to appreciate it because I feel like I haven't done much of that. This video might be about critically tearing it apart, but I do want to genuinely convey the skills themselves are creative and fun, and I mean, people are very excited about it already, but I feel like I can still add to this by being a bit more specific about what's working for me. To be clear, I care way more about if a skill is interesting than balanced for reasons I'll cover next. But first, my favorites. Bounty Hunter has deservedly gotten a lot of attention already. I really like the depth and care here, and the playstyle it encourages is so unique and just fun. The game doesn't normally encourage someone to be the specials killer. This one skill feels like it totally warps your playstyle to seek out specials, and it thoroughly rewards you without punishing you. More of this. Then the fart smoke skill stuck out to me immediately. Poisonous gas. There's something exciting about flipping the usefulness of smokes, and they can be both utility and a lethal anti-area, especially because Payday could really use some more anti-area. This is the closest we're ever going to get to Molotovs. It's always refreshing when you can pitch in the extra skill points for the option to play something a different way. And speaking about flipping the usefulness, the pill pusher tree literally encourages you to go down and rewards you with more health and damage resistance. I like seeing skills take something negative and turn it positive for that build. It makes the build feel unique. Then Cutthroat Tree is just cool. It's pretty goofy, but it's neat they carved a niche for another playstyle with just throwing knives, and they did well to make it strong and replenishable. I know I kind of like clowned on it earlier, but I do feel like they did a good job on it, and it's worth celebrating. Chaining kills like the SMG has you doing is also new to the series somehow and good fun. I wish this wasn't SMG exclusive, and there's some merit in the weirder skills, like you just have to shrug and imagine how good the flashbang stealth build is gonna be, but I'm glad it exists at all. And now I have to put the voice back on, because positivity time is coming to an abrupt end. I don't know how else to put this. I thought I liked more skills than I do, but now that I'm combing over the list, a lot of them are padding and the rest are damage buffs, which they're one way to give the player power, sure, but I just covered so many more interesting ways than just passive damage buffs, right? And by padding, I mean how there's 9 stockpile skills, all of which only exist to give you more max ammo in that tree. I still think it's interesting that the shotgun tree is about point blank kills, and the assault rifles tree is about shooting unarmored parts, and the marksmen are about headshots. I guess I'm just realizing that Skills 2.0 is very novel. Being shown and analyzing every inch of it has spoiled a lot of the curiosity and surprise, as if I don't even need to try these other straight up damage buff playstyles because they've explained themselves just by me looking at them. What I'm basically getting at with this side tangent is that Skills 2.0 would be way more exciting if we didn't get several months to mull it over. Every moment I spend with the Skills 2.0 blog is another moment of whimsy leaving my body that, had the blog come at a later time, the whimsy could have just been spent experiencing it for myself when the system came out. But, you know, yapping is historically more fun than Payday 3 anyway. Ask any Starbreeze partner, heyo! Let's finally touch on balance and difficulty. This is like the final boss of the Discourse. This is where the Skills 2.0 conversation goes to die. And it will indeed die here because I have zero interest in getting mired in the weeds of all the skills. I could go page by page and talk about how the sentries deal infinite damage. Pretty cool. But that's basically what I did in my Armor 2.0 video when Hardy was gonna be infinite health. And all that resulted in is them disabling Hardy with impact plates. Boring! I'd rather they don't fix it than half-ass a fix like that, genuinely. So, it's hard to engage with this topic because everyone agrees Skills 2.0 will be imbalanced. The argument is more like a will they or won't they balance the difficulty, and a third option, doesn't matter. This is the first corner I want to address, is the for fun crowd. The people that would rather have a fun game than a balanced one. The strongest argument in their favor is that Payday 3 is a PvE game. It doesn't matter if the P has an unfair advantage over the E, because the E isn't real. Many single-player games are all about bulldozing your twerp computer opponents. Why not extend this to co-op? Let's be clear, game balance is not necessarily about the fairest experience. It's about the most satisfying experience. Nobody saw Dark Souls in 2011 and thought, oh, what a fair little hack and slash game. It tested the player's skill, and beating the test was satisfying. We should hope Payday 3 recognizes that, and the skills don't play the game for us per se, but give us the tools to activate our intrinsic skill as players to beat the game. Because if I can truly just throw a sentry down in Skills 2.0, and then make a gumbo while it plays for me, that's going to be satisfying approximately one time, and then everyone's gonna get pissed off that the next guy in their lobby has a sentry guns playing the game for everybody, and you could really extend this to a lot of the best skills. So the difficulty conversation hasn't moved. It's still about the developer's ability to tweak enemies to challenge the player and tweak the skills to be more fairly balanced around each other. If you ask me, neither will happen. They might adjust enemy health a lot and spawns a lot, but this is just gonna be another thing harkening back to the Jenga analogy from earlier. The maps and the enemy AI are not prepared for there to be 3 times as many enemies on the map. And even if it was, you have to ask, would more enemies make it satisfying to play, or just line up more targets for the sentries? You tell me. This is the part where the essay eats its own tail because I've run out of profound, long-winded, overarching topics to say, but something that's really been itching my brain this whole time, that somehow wraps around everything I've mentioned so far, is dodge. I'm glad dodge is back. More ways to play is healthy. Some people disagree for good reason I've already tapped into, but remember the earlier part where it feels like everything they add to the game just juts out and changes the context of everything else in the game? Why can you take dodge with 4-plate armor? Am I going crazy? This is like the one thing that should have been copied from Payday 2, and they made a small effort with the tier 1 skill of the dodge tree. Look here, 20% less max dodge per plate. So you can only get 20% on 4 plates, right? Unless, of course, you side climb around it. Obviously. My overarching point though, because I can't resist, is that Skills 2.0 genuinely feels like it was made independently from Armor 2.0. It's bizarre this is the only conscious reference to armor chunks in the entire system, besides the Assassin Metal reskin in the handguns tree. The bit of uniqueness Payday 3 holds over 2 is the armor chunk system, but it's been totally forgotten about in the Skills 2.0 system. Payday 2's dodge and armor trees were directly opposite. Thanks to concealment, you had to choose one, not to mention every perk deck cares about what armor you take. And it just doesn't matter now. It's the one thing in your loadout you can make whatever, and it feels really empty that way. There's not even guidance on a playstyle you should match your armor with. How'd they miss this? People are already starting to realize the 2 and 3 chunk armor passes are just not as worthwhile as 1 and 4, which is going to polarize players into taking 1 plate for max dodge and fun because 4 plate regen timers suck ass, or 4 plate for max everything else. And now we're getting into throwaway line territory, but I'd be remiss not to mention the 1.0 skills that aren't bringing back in Skills 2.0, which feels like mechanics were fundamentally left out. Like Hacker was a fun way to blow up drones, Pin Puller gave a lot of meaning to the human shield mechanic, and Blade Bouncer would fit perfectly with throwing knives skill tree. Where did these go? Are human shields being phased out entirely? And what the fuck is going to happen to techies if the drone that gets rid of Edge, Grit, and Rush has nothing to do, and you can't even explode the baby drones for fun anymore? It's ridiculous to think by the time techies got the Edge, Grit, Rush drones added to the game, everyone had already agreed the skill system needed to be replaced. It's the Jenga thing. The techies were designed for the foundation of Payday 3, and now the techie doesn't make sense for where the gameplay is heading. Every Jenga block is equally confused about where the gameplay is going. Some other things I've not seen brought up much, but wanted to elevate other people's great points. It's frustrating that they're bringing back invisible timers. We're throwing out EGR, but a lot of skills boil down to bonuses for like 2 to 5 seconds that you get repeatedly, and I doubt we'll have the luxury to see those timers just like Payday 2. It's also silly that we're 2 years into the game, and damage numbers are still hidden behind bars, which is going to get in the way of mathing breakpoints for all of the damage buff skills. And the essay wouldn't be complete without truly eating its own tail down to the base. The last thing I want to talk about is the Discourse itself. Again, it's not just embarrassing to see people sort into being unconditionally positive about a very complicated thing, like this post laughing at the 4,444% damage bonus skill, which I believe was confirmed to be a typo in the blog. But look at these comments eating it up like, oh, what an immaculate skill, how elegantly subtle and well balanced. Another amazing new skill, to the skill that literally lets you one-shot every enemy with a pea shooter like you picked up an insta-kill in zombies. But with a smoke grenade you can just get back. I make this video to invite everyone to be different than the reactionary schlock invading the discourse. Still, what's way worse is the CEO dick riding. Everywhere you look, people bouncing up and down AK's shaft. He did not fucking do this, he did not fucking make Skills 2.0, obviously. It's not like they designed it ages ago but kept it in the vault, and then finally this guy steps in and shouts, "Release the files," and flops out Skills 2.0. The team did this. He had the very least to do with this, because we know he only came in around May. Mind you, in the 5 months since he stepped in, he still hasn't picked up a new game director, which I would have assumed is really crucial for a Skills 2.0 design. The new job listing pretty much confirms Andreas was juggling 2 roles at once this whole time as interim director for an entire year, and a few months without Almir at that. But if that speculation isn't convincing enough, look no further because Skills 2.0 was announced alongside the release of the promised and highly hyped up Payday 2 content update. A new subscription service for a 12-year-old game. A game that any of the Payday 2 diehards will tell you is a fucking mess. The past 2 major updates royally fucked the game, and then they just stopped supporting it after ruining it. Which, I kid you not, the infamous Epic Online update everyone hated a while back also introduced a way to spoof your username. So just the other week, someone posted a username that was distributing illegal content in a way that bypassed the censors. That took me back to like late 2000s shovelware games, like how Xbox 360 Uno Online turned into an eSex platform with a lot of bad stuff because the only people that were left playing it just played it because it had unmoderated voice chat. But I digress, that was just a little anecdote. There's a lot you could do to help Payday 2's mangled corpse look pretty in the morgue. And a subscription service is a $5 slap in the mutilated face. To go back to a game after 2 years just to add a flow of income is blatantly scummy. It shows no respect for the players on either game because it's pathetically distracting Payday 3 work to avoid helping Payday 2 players. Now, is a subscription a good or bad thing in isolation? I don't care. It doesn't affect me or anyone else arguing about it, frankly. I've seen people saying, oh, it's good to only spend $5 to enjoy the $200 of DLC I don't have. Hypothetically, because I have it all. You know what I mean? It's not possible to engage in that discourse, and even ignoring that argument, I still think it's a bad thing because of the other scummy shit the CEO pulled. They made the DLC more expensive. It went from 52% discounted by default in this bundle to 33% by default, adding $50 to the bundle cost of owning all DLC to make this subscription appear more appealing. So he's essentially vulturing into a neglected and suffering Payday 2 and price gouging it to profit. They finally walked it back a few days later, pretending it was just a mistake, when you can tell right there they planned weeks in advance to price gouge people and just didn't expect to get caught. And you know, even knocking off the price gouging thing, that doesn't redeem the fact that they're adding a way to spend money on a game that is dysfunctional and needs fixes first. I am genuinely so pissed off at the sheer number of dick riders in the subreddit specifically that are like, ooh, the subscription is good actually, ignoring that Payday 2 for over 2 years has had many unchecked crucial problems. You need so many mods just to assemble the limbs of Payday 2 so that it doesn't crash whenever you do anything. No matter how you slice this, it's predatory and exactly what you would expect from the new CEO. I was initially rolling my eyes at the Doom posters being like, oh, he's a former EA executive, we're screwed. But after this, he has proven that exactly. He is EAK. I genuinely cannot stand glazing a CEO at all, but certainly not after this move. Okay. It's time to wrap up. I need to summarize everything I've covered for my own sake. I feel like I felt so scatterbrained through all this. I can't believe I said so much. The number one thing is I feel like Payday 3 is fundamentally fucked. The well was poisoned from the start like 5 years ago when a scrappy company in debt was crushed by royalties in exchange for more loans to make Payday 3. Every step has been the studio clawing to get out of its shit situation, but Payday 3 is a shit game that was built on top of shit conditions, and everything they do to try to improve the situation will be smeared in shit. Skills 2.0 is a nugget of gold smeared in shit. It is an exciting system with very fun and interesting ideas that everyone might just get bored of in a few weeks because they'll be reminded, again, that in order to play with the nugget of gold, they have to swim in shit. Payday 3 gameplay is the pool of shit, and Skills 2.0 will only distract from that for so long. Secondly, I feel like even in a perfect world where Skills 2.0 is a hit and doesn't get boring fast, it could be so much better if it wasn't copying Payday 2 bar for bar. The perceived variety is really frustrating to me, and I know people are going to get smart on the skill trees sooner or later and realize that, just like Armor 2.0, the amount of things you will do with it is significantly smaller than the amount of things you can do with it. I wish more skills didn't hard limit you to a gun, so that when I'm theory crafting, I could actually negotiate if I want to splurge for ammo funnel or assassin medal. Instead, the second I've decided on a gun, I've locked myself out of getting one before I've decided if I even want the other. It's half-baked. Skills 2.0 needs several berserks so you can negotiate which passives are the most interesting to your playstyle, instead of letting the developers tell you which playstyle fits your preferred gun. As for side climbing, I don't see a reality where it's a good thing, but for a different reason than most people justify. The bottom line is it further encourages you to stay on one skill page, which means builds will come out looking more samey for no good reason. It's a feature that discourages diversifying your builds, and if they seriously balance around side climbing, then everyone will have to do it and builds will suck even more. Or, if they don't balance around it, no one's going to use it because side climbing doesn't save that many skill points, and every tree encourages you to build from the bottom up for the tier 1 bonus. Then there's difficulty, which I don't see being solved in time for Skills 2.0. I don't think there's any magic they can do to the difficulty that will make the gameplay satisfying, unfortunately. Certainly not in their short time frame. Especially seeing how Skills 2.0 doesn't interact with Armor 2.0, I simply can't trust the team to rework enemies to be balanced around all these new systems. And last and also least, I'm not taking shit from EAK anymore. Took like 1 week from my last video where I'm like, oh, he could save the game maybe. Nah, all CEOs are bastards, y'all. Fuck them all. In conclusion, Skills 2.0 is gonna be a lot of fun. It could be more fun, sure, but it's gonna meet the moment and be the best update Payday 3 has ever seen. I genuinely mean that. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I could ever be convinced Payday 3 is just one more update from Salvageable. Each update is like an 8-month carrot on a stick to momentary bliss. The Payday 3 gameplay, the foundation of everything, is not good yet, and Skills 2.0 is not gonna solo that problem either. But Skills 2.0 will be fun on its own anyway. That's genuinely worth celebrating. Thanks for watching, y'all. Like and subscribe, and have a good one. Peace and love, peace and love. I want to like pad the time out a little bit so that the end cards pop up. I forgot to put the end cards in my last video like a fool. Can you watch those, please? Since you stuck to the end, do you mind? If you haven't seen them, it's just I feel like my videos are pretty good. I feel like it'd be nice if you watched my other videos. Or just like, you know, you can just look at them and consider it. You don't have to, just like, you know, consider it, please. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.